Jace Arden crouched behind the jagged metal of a collapsed Elendrin transport, the hum of distant plasma cannons vibrating through his boots. Every instinct screamed for him to stay sharp, to stay silent, but as usual his human curiosity was already dragging him into trouble. He peered over the edge, squinting at the alien skyline, and muttered, "Nothing like a war zone to ruin your Monday." The city around him was a chaos of crystalline towers sliced through with neon veins of energy, buildings that shimmered like fractured rainbows under the dim red sky, yet all of it was scarred by the recent bombardments. Somewhere above, the occasional streak of enemy fighter fire left temporary scars in the atmosphere, disappearing as quickly as they arrived. "Sergeant Arden, report?" A voice crackled in his helmet. "Still breathing," Jace replied, "though I can't promise my sense of humor will survive this." He paused. "Honestly, I'm starting to think laughter is classified as a tactical weapon. No one wants to deploy it." A ripple of chuckles, robotic in tone, came from the comm. Not exactly morale-boosting, but it was better than silence. He adjusted the jointed plating of his armor, which was heavy enough to feel like a portable tank, but light enough to leave him wishing he'd taken a transfer to supply duty. That armor, which made him a fortress to everyone else, often felt like a prison when facing the unknown. And today, the unknown was not just enemy soldiers, it was Princess Lysera herself, who had been sighted near the city's central energy spire. Intelligence reports were vague. She was elusive, daring, and possibly the universe's most irritatingly confident alien. Jace hated irritating aliens almost as much as he hated paperwork. "Sir," a calm voice broke in again, movement detected at 12 o'clock. He followed the direction, spotting a figure sliding with impossible grace along the crystalline walls. Even from a distance, the long ears were unmistakable, swaying gently as if the wind itself had agreed to obey her. "Lysera. The princess." She glanced down, or perhaps through the surrounding debris, and for a moment her deep violet eyes seemed to catch his own. "You humans do enjoy dressing like interstellar sardines, don't you?" she called, the tone half amused, half reprimanding. Jace almost dropped his rifle. "Sir?" His calm voice said nothing. "Just imagining what it would be like if armor had feelings," Jace muttered. He crouched lower, realizing his usual preference for staying hidden was slipping. The princess, though regal and untouchable, radiated an aura of daring that made it impossible to remain entirely serious. "And apparently sarcasm is the first casualty of war," he added. Lysera dropped gracefully onto a lower platform, long ears twitching in the way Jace was starting to find both intimidating and fascinating. She had the kind of presence that made gravity seem optional, as if the laws of physics themselves bowed in her direction. Her uniform gleamed like liquid silver, yet her stance was relaxed, casual, teasing, definitely a challenge. "You're out of place, human," she said, one eyebrow arching in the most alien way possible, even for someone carrying enough steel to make a small moon blush. Jace allowed himself a wry grin. "And you're out of your royal bubble, apparently," he replied. "I hear Elendrin princesses are supposed to stay at least 3 planets away from human soldiers, or is that just a suggestion?" Lysera's lips quirked in the ghost of a smile and her ears twitched sharply. "Suggestions are for the timid, and humans seem to have an excellent talent for ignoring them." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of ozone and scorched metal, and suddenly a series of tremors ran through the ground. Jace's armor creaked ominously, reminding him that, for all his bravado, it was a suit of high-tech steel and not a magic shield. "You know," he said more to himself than to her, "if we survive this day, I'd like to nominate you as my therapist." Lysera's laugh was soft but musical, echoing off the crystalline towers. "I charge extra," she said, balancing on the edge of a broken beam. "Payment in danger and humiliation non-refundable." Jace shook his head, momentarily forgetting the tension, and began advancing cautiously, using the debris for cover. Every step felt like a negotiation between his training and his curiosity. And then, in the middle of the spire's shattered plaza, she suddenly stopped and raised a hand. "Do you always look so armored, or is today special?" He lifted his visor slightly, exposing a smirk. "Depends. Today I'm hoping armor can do the talking because apparently my face is considered negotiable." Lysera tilted her head, examining him with those violet eyes that seemed to pierce through every layer of steel. "Interesting, usually humans are predictable. You, however, might be chaotic enough to survive this city with your sense of humor intact. Before he could respond, a tremor erupted beneath their feet, sending a shower of shards and dust into the air. Jace lunged, catching himself against the wall, and muttered, "Great gravity just remembered I exist. Could it be more dramatic?" Lysera landed beside him with feline grace, her ears flicking like radar dishes. "You'll find dramatic is my specialty," she said, one hand brushing a loose crystal shard aside. "And yet somehow I suspect you'll survive, if only because you make everything amusingly difficult for the universe." "Amusingly difficult," Jace echoed, trying to keep his balance. "That sounds like a compliment if you ignore the part where I almost die every 2 minutes." Her laugh rose above the chaos again, pure and teasing. "Consider it an investment in your character development." For the first time in hours, Jace allowed himself to relax, even if just slightly. He realized with a faint sting of disbelief that this alien princess, this being who could probably level the entire city if she wished, was enjoying his company in some way. The thought was both absurd and terrifying, and he couldn't decide which made him laugh more: the danger, the humor, or the impossibility of what he felt creeping into his chest. They moved cautiously together, the ruined cityscape both their playground and their battlefield. Debris clattered underfoot, and strange alien devices occasionally sparked with blue plasma, throwing flickering shadows across their faces. Lysera made small jokes about his clunky armor, and Jace returned with quips about her cheating ears and the way she could probably detect heartbeats 3 floors below. By the time they reached a partially intact observation deck, Jace found himself genuinely smiling, the tension of the war zone momentarily softened by the princess's teasing presence. "I'm not sure whether to admire your agility or fear it," he admitted. "Why not both?" Lysera replied, her ears flicking as if in perfect timing with her words. "It keeps life interesting." Jace glanced at her, noticing for the first time the faint lines of fatigue around her eyes, the way her long ears twitched not just with attention but with emotion. He realized that beneath the teasing, beneath the veneer of regality and danger, she was as real and fallible as any human. And maybe, just maybe, that made her even more dangerous. A sudden alarm blared across the ruined plaza, jolting him upright. Jace grabbed a plasma launcher from the nearby crate, fumbling with the controls as Lysera perched effortlessly above him, scanning for threats. "You humans and your clumsy weapons," she said, ear flicking toward him. "Still, I admit your enthusiasm is charming." "Charming, huh?" Jace said, grinning despite the chaos. "I'll take that as a win." Lysera's smile was brief, serious, and playful at the same time. "Consider it your first reward for keeping up. Now follow me and try not to get in the way of destiny." Jace sighed, adjusting his armor once more. "Destiny," he muttered, "just what I needed, more paperwork disguised as danger." They moved forward together into the shattered city, the distant hum of war fading slightly behind them. For the first time, the impossible felt a little less intimidating, softened by laughter and the strange, unsettling thrill of trust. Somewhere deep beneath the armor and the jokes, Jace wondered if surviving Lysera's presence might be the greater challenge of all. The rubble beneath Jace's boots crunched with each cautious step as he followed Lysera through the shattered heart of the Elendrin city. The air shimmered with residual energy from the recent bombardments, making the crystal towers around them pulse faintly like living things. Lysera's long ears twitched as she led, scanning every corner with unnerving precision. Jace had to admit he was impressed. She moved like gravity obeyed her whims, every stride controlled yet effortless. "I swear," he muttered, "if she falls once, the universe will implode from disappointment." Lysera shot him a sidelong glance, one eyebrow rising. "And here I thought humans were supposed to be brave." "You're already making jokes under fire, very promising." "I call it morale," Jace replied. "Keeps the existential dread at bay. You should try it sometime, maybe it'll help with royal ennui." "Royal ennui?" she asked, a note of genuine curiosity flickering in her violet eyes. "You humans have strange expressions for suffering." They paused at the edge of a collapsed observation deck, the city stretching below them like a fractured circuit board. Sparks arced from exposed power conduits, painting the ruin in shifting blues and purples. Lysera crouched on the ledge and gestured for him to follow. "Careful! Gravity hasn't signed any contracts guaranteeing your safety today." Jace leaned forward, testing the unstable platform with the tip of his boot. Contracts are overrated, he said. I prefer chaos with occasional optimism. He adjusted the plasma launcher slung over his shoulder, muttering, and a little luck never hurts. Plasma launcher? Lysera tilted her head, ear flicking. Humans and your theatrical weapons. I was hoping for something subtler, like hand gestures that disintegrate enemies. Tashay, Jace said, grinning. Though I'd need lessons, and knowing you, the tuition comes with ear-twisting penalties. She chuckled, the sound light and melodic, momentarily easing the tension. Perhaps, she said, hopping to a nearby shard of crystal that jutted from the ground. But I think you'll learn fast. Humans have a surprising capacity for improvised survival. They moved carefully, ducking under twisted energy conduits and stepping over rubble that shifted underfoot. At one point, a strange creature, half organic, half mechanical, scuttled past, its single glowing eye scanning them before it disappeared into a vent. Jace jumped and muttered, "Friendly neighborhood robots, huh? I'm getting used to this." Lysera laughed. Friendly is a relative term. Consider them more curious than polite. Hours passed, though time felt distorted in the city's fractured environment. The light changed from the harsh reds of the sky to the eerie bioluminescence of the alien spires, casting both of them in shifting colors that made Jace feel like he was walking through a living painting. Lysera made occasional jokes about his stumbling over debris, calling him a human puppet with questionable balance, and he responded with mock indignation, insisting that humans were graceful in strictly chaotic ways. At a narrow corridor between two tilted towers, Lysera paused and tapped a panel embedded in the wall. A holographic map flickered to life, bathing them in cyan light. "We need to move through the central energy conduit," she explained, tracing the path with one elongated finger. "It's the fastest route to the archive hub, assuming the security drones haven't already repurposed themselves as death traps." "Archive hub?" Jace asked. "Sounds fancy. Is it where you keep all the alien snacks or something more sinister?" Lysera's ears twitched sharply, her lips curving into a faint grin. "Mostly records, occasionally snacks. You humans really do try to make humor survive in dangerous situations, don't you?" "I prefer the term strategic distraction," Jace said. "Keeps the mind from exploding." They pressed on, encountering security drones with rotating laser eyes that swept the corridor in precise arcs. Lysera moved with feline precision, ducking and twisting, while Jace relied on a combination of brute strength and guesswork. Every time he triggered an alarm, Lysera would groan dramatically and quip, "And here I thought humans had subtlety." Finally, they reached a collapsed ceiling where a holographic interface had been partially exposed. Lysera scanned the interface, then stepped aside as Jace struggled with the human-constructed input panel. "You might want to move faster," she said, one ear flicking toward the corridor. "Or not. I quite enjoy watching humans wrestle with technology." "Rude but motivating," Jace muttered, finally hacking into the system and projecting an archive hologram. Ancient Elendrin battles played out in three-dimensional form, armies of light and plasma clashing as he and Lysera watched. Jace had to stifle a laugh as a heroic Elendrin general appeared to trip mid-battle, his holographic armor flailing in ways that would be comical if it weren't ancient history. Lysera's laugh was quiet, but she nudged him lightly. "See, even our ancestors had clumsy moments. It makes you feel less human." "I'll take solace wherever I can find it," Jace said, eyes still glued to the holograms. "And here I thought history was boring." Hours of cautious exploration gave way to moments of conversation and teasing. Lysera revealed glimpses of her life under royal expectations. Mandatory diplomacy, endless ceremonies, and the pressure of being perceived as perfect. Jace, in turn, spoke of his fears of being just another disposable soldier, his sarcasm masking a deeper unease about the war and his place in it. At one point, she flicked a shard of crystal at him and he instinctively ducked. "Humans," she said, amusement in her tone, always reacting to the smallest of dangers. "Reaction time, princess," Jace replied, brushing dust from his armor, "is a survival skill, and apparently it's also good for dodging royalty." Night began to settle, though the alien city never truly slept. The bioluminescent glow of the towers cast shifting shadows that made every corner both mysterious and threatening. They found temporary shelter in a semi-collapsed observation chamber, surrounded by dangling conduits and shards of glass that refracted light into a million colors. Lysera leaned against a fragment of wall, watching Jace carefully dismantle a small drone that had wandered into their hiding spot. "You know," she said after a pause, "humans seem remarkably fragile for creatures that think themselves so tough." "And yet," Jace replied, grinning despite exhaustion, "we also have a talent for surviving improbable odds. You might even say it's endearing." Lysera's ears twitched sharply and she allowed herself a small smile. "Endearing, huh? I think I like this version of humanity." The tension of the day eased into a rhythm of quiet conversation and occasional jokes, a fragile camaraderie forming between human and princess. The ruined city hummed softly around them, alive with residual energy, stray drones, and the occasional distant explosion. Lysera leaned back against the wall, her long ears swaying, and Jace realized that for the first time in months, the war felt momentarily distant. "Tomorrow," he muttered, "we tackle more collapsing architecture, dangerous tech, and probably the occasional existential threat. Fun times." Lysera laughed, faint and musical. "And you'll survive, won't you?" "I'll survive," he said, "mostly because I refuse to let you have all the fun." She regarded him with her violet eyes, a mixture of amusement and something unspoken. In that quiet moment, the distance between soldier and princess seemed to shrink, leaving only two beings who had chosen to trust, tease, and laugh together amidst the chaos of a war-torn world. And somewhere beneath the rubble, the faint hum of the city's energy conduits seemed to echo that fragile understanding. Survival was easier with unexpected allies and a little humor. Jace Arden adjusted his armor for what felt like the 100th time that day, the metal plates creaking in protest as he shifted. Across the shattered observation deck, Lysera watched him, her long ears flicking with what he guessed was equal parts curiosity and impatience. The city below them still smoldered from the skirmishes, but for a moment the distant hum of war seemed quieter, almost like the world was holding its breath. "You're fidgeting," she said, tilting her head. "Is it the armor, or are you secretly afraid I'll make you dance?" "Dance?" Jace asked, raising an eyebrow beneath his helmet. "Unless it involves laser swords and zero gravity, I'm safe, mostly." Lysera's laughter echoed off the jagged crystal towers. "Mostly," she repeated. Interesting choice of words for someone who has survived half the war with both his wits and questionable taste in humor. Jace grinned, the tension loosening just enough to let a hint of relief in. "Questionable taste is my specialty," he said. "It's part of the survival kit." She stepped closer, the light catching the metallic sheen of her uniform, and for a moment the world around them, the rubble, the energy sparks, the distant thrum of plasma, faded. Then in a tone that carried both command and challenge, Lysera said, "Take off your armor." Jace froze mid-breath. "Excuse me." "Do it," she said, one ear flicking impatiently. "Now." He looked at her, trying to read the expression on her face. It was hard. Violet eyes, just a hint of humor playing on her lips, and ears twitching in a rhythm he couldn't decode. You want me to hear now?" "Yes," she said simply. "Trust me or don't, but do it." Jace sighed dramatically, speaking as though addressing an audience of 1,000 invisible commanders. "Fine, but if I die of embarrassment, the universe is going to hear about it." He started loosening the armor, plate by plate, feeling the weight of the metal literally lifting off him. Each movement revealed the scars he'd hidden for years, stories written in flesh and memories. His chest, arms, and shoulders bore marks of battles, explosions, and mistakes that had once seemed unforgivable. Lysera didn't flinch. She watched quietly, the astonishment on her face subtle but unmistakable. Her long ears twitched almost imperceptibly, betraying an emotion she clearly didn't want to name. "You humans," she murmured finally, "carry so much and yet you survive." "Mostly," Jace said, smirking through the tension. "Mostly by hoping no one notices the rest." She smiled faintly, the corner of her lips curving in a way that was both approving and teasing. "There is strength in honesty," she said, "and humor. I think that's why I've been amused by you all this time." He raised an eyebrow. "Amused? I was hoping for something more heroic." "Heroism is overrated," Lysera replied, stepping closer. "Enduring, surviving, finding laughter when everything's falling apart, that's rarer than any sword, Jace Arden." He swallowed, feeling the truth in her words. For the first time, he realized that the battles he had fought, the rules he had obeyed, the armor he had worn, were all shields not just from enemies but from himself. And yet here, before this alien princess who laughed at danger like it was a minor inconvenience, he felt something different: trust. "You know," he said finally, "I always thought armor was protection. Turns out it was just a distraction." Lysera's ears twitched sharply. Distraction. "A way to hide," he admitted. "From fear, from failure, from myself. But standing here, I think I can see better with less metal in the way." Her smile deepened. "And that," she said softly, "is what I wanted to see, not the metal, not the soldier, not the human, just you." They stood in silence for a heartbeat, the hum of the city below mingling with the pulse of the residual energy. Then, as though to break the solemnity, Jace gestured at one of the flickering plasma conduits. "You know, you could have warned me this wasn't a casual armor removal exercise. I'd have prepared better snacks or something." Lysera laughed, the sound like wind chimes over a canyon of glass. "You humans and your priorities," she said. "I'll take it as is." The war, for all its destruction, suddenly felt like background noise. They had faced enemies, collapsing architecture, drones, and the chaos of a galaxy at war, yet somehow this small, absurdly human moment felt larger than any battle. And as they looked at each other, a quiet understanding passed